Sources tell CNN that President Trump directed his senior staff to push the Justice Department to lift a gag order on an FBI informant. That informant, a key player in the FBI investigation into Russian efforts to gain influence in America's uranium industry during the Obama administration. But the DOJ has strict rules limiting the White House's involvement in criminal law enforcement matters. Let's discuss this and more with Kellyanne Conway, counselor to President Trump. Kellyanne, nice to see you.
Good morning, Allison. Thank you.
Long time no talk. Great to have you here. So tell us why this was important to the president to lift this gag order on this informant.
I've been watching this morning. I did want to correct the record on one thing, and it looks like CNN's own reporting by Gloria Borger, Evan Perez, and Mary Kay Maloney also indicate this, that it was Chairman Grassley of the Judiciary Committee that last week made this request, and that's the proper channel here. There's also a source in CNN's own reporting that says that the Justice Department made this decision independently. But it is not unusual. It is not unusual for a president to weigh in. This president, as you saw from everything with the JFK files to this particular ongoing investigation, Allison, is for transparency, and he believes, as many others do, frankly, that the FBI informant should be free to say what he knows. But this was made, let me repeat, the Judiciary Chairman in the United States Senate, Chuck Grassley, made this request to the Justice Department last week.
Sure, we appreciate that, but we also have reporting that the president pressed for it. So he was interested.
But he is. I think we should all be interested in it. I certainly am, and I'm not the president. We should all be interested in knowing what this person knows. I mean, we've wasted a lot of time. I don't know how much you guys pay for your graphics, but boy, you've had some doozies out there with Russia for almost a year, still talking about the last election, looking for collusion where it doesn't exist, and yet now we are faced with the possibility, and it looks like the very real probability, the DNC and the Clinton campaign paid a foreign agent for information to try to smear a Donald Trump, a political opponent.
Meaning
look, I want to say it is
British intel officer, which is different than Russia, right?
I didn't say he was Russian. I said he was foreign. Britain, last time I checked, counts as that. And even Democratic Senator Joe Manchin on a different program yesterday indicated that he didn't think it was appropriate. So let me just say, using public sources to look at the records of your political opponent, I guess people do that all the time. But using foreign intelligence and assets to create a dossier that they've still discredited, that can't be verified, right. And frankly, it was paid by the millions. I have to credit you. I saw you on earlier this morning on a panel situation saying that how in the world could they pay millions of dollars and nobody knows that it happened? That's a great question. I know the Clinton campaign and the DNC wasted a ton of money on their major loss.
I hear you.
But nobody takes responsibility for millions of dollars.
Well,
so
look,
let's hear what this guy has to say.
As you know, we've been covering it a lot. It was our own Manu Raju who's been leading the reporting on all of this, so we've been covering it. But I do want to ask you on that front, that brings us to, of course, Cambridge Analytica, which was your data collecting data analytics firm during the Trump campaign that was reached out to WikiLeaks, of all places. So reached out to WikiLeaks, which, as we know, has a direct tie to Russia. So that is also a foreign entity, of course, and wanting their help with this data collection. So square those two for us.
I only know what I read in the press on this, which is that he made that entry, and Julian Assange says that he rejected it, never happened.
But the
Trump campaign has since spoken on this. The Trump campaign, no, Alexander Nix at Cambridge Analytica did. But the Trump campaign has since spoken on this. There were a number of data firms involved. We relied heavily also on the RNC. They were great partners in this effort. Cambridge Analytica was paid by the campaign, and Brad Parscale was the digital director.
But would you be uncomfortable if you knew that it was true? Okay, so as he testified to, that he did reach out, or I shouldn't say testified, quoted. Are you uncomfortable with trying to bring in WikiLeaks to help?
Well, let me just tell you what was totally unnecessary. Any of that was completely unnecessary for a very simple reason. We beat Hillary Clinton fairly and squarely. Russia did not tell her not to go to Wisconsin and Michigan, She came up with that all by herself. And they didn't tell, we didn't tell them to spend millions of dollars on some phony baloney dossier to try to smear a political opponent rather than beating him on the issues, because she couldn't beat him on the issues any more than the Democrats can beat us on the issues now because they're bereft of issues. Yeah, we're clear on all that,
but are you comfortable that the Trump campaign through the Cambridge Analytica had a connection to WikiLeaks?
They didn't have a connection to WikiLeaks.
They reached out to WikiLeaks to help with the data.
That's what I read in the No, not to help with the data. It's something about releasing the emails. I know nothing about that because I was the campaign manager and I can't be bothered with any of that. And the reason is we wanted to beat her fairly and squarely in the issues. We had 3 debates. CNN was heavily involved. Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton on the issues. He had a better economic plan. People want their taxes lower. They want
But as the
Obamacare
campaign manager, surely you were interested in the data collection. And if they were hold on a second, if they were pressing WikiLeaks to help unearth more emails, you're okay with that? You're comfortable with that?
The campaign was not doing that.
The data firm that you were using and paid $6 million to did do that.
No, that individual reached out to Assange. We've already covered this, and I think CNN's covered it. And you know,
but we'd like to get the answer. Are you comfortable with it or not?
I've already told you it's completely unnecessary because we beat her on the issues and continue to. And I do want to say something else because people now are writing about our discussion. And earlier in your broadcast, 2 commentators mentioned that, oh, gee, we just like to talk about Hillary. We can't stop talking about Hillary. You're still talking about Hillary. I'll make you a deal. I never have to say her word again.
Okay, good. So let's move on with this interview
and not mention her because she was the one who lost. She was the loser, so you have to keep talking about her.
Let's not mention her.
And you treat her book like it's not fiction and everything else. She gets a platform on CNN plenty, and you allowed people from her campaign on your network for the last year to sit there and never admit they paid millions of dollars for this phony dossier.
It seems hard for you, Kellyanne, not to talk about Hillary Clinton.
They sat there and lied about it. No, you brought her up.
Kellyanne,
we're fine. We dispensed with her a year ago.
But if you want to pact right now that we're not going to talk about her for the rest of the interview, let's do that.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's move on. One last point on WikiLeaks. Are you saying that you knew nothing about the data, the Cambridge Analytica, trying to get WikiLeaks help with unearthing emails from the DNC?
The first I learned of that was this week through the news.
Okay. And you would be uncomfortable or comfortable with that?
Allison, I've answered your question many times. Uncomfortable with what? I told you it wasn't
with
necessary.
WikiLeaks.
I was focused on the issues. The data that I collected as a pollster of 28 years had everything to do with the forgotten man and forgotten woman. The undercover Trump voter that I detected in July and was excoriated by CNN commentators and elsewise, that's a big joke. They're not undercover. Who are they? These are people who had never voted Republican or hadn't voted Republican or hadn't voted in years. And they were there for Donald Trump because of his superior message. And frankly, he was just a much better messenger and communicator than she was.
Okay, so let's just talk about...
And I know I was brought up, God, I hope that's a squirrel, not a rat. I was, hi squirrel. It's better than the lawnmower that's always back there.
That's right.
But Allison, seriously speaking, I was hoping, I mean, it's your show, you can pick what you want to talk about, but I was hoping we could talk about the opioid epidemic a little bit.
We want to.
Major speech yesterday, and I mean, I just start to feel that we're ignoring issues that affect a lot of Americans. 64,000 dead last year. The president, the first lady, gave a major policy speech yesterday, and there were lots of Democrats in the audience, which made me very happy. It's a nonpartisan issue in search of bipartisan solutions.
It is a universal issue, and I do want to get to it in 1 second. But one last thing on Russia. What is it that worries the president about the uranium deal? And the Russia thing is confusing. Because, as you know, this president has talked a lot about how Russia can be a good friend. We should move forward with Russia. Russia can help the U.S. with world peace. Vladimir Putin is not to be feared. So why now the fixation on the Uranium One deal?
Well, first of all, the president's not worried about Uranium One. The people who should be worried about Uranium One are the people who benefited from it. His spouse didn't go make a $500,000 speech in Russia while he was Secretary of State and then turn around and be part of the decision-making process for them to get 20% of our rights. He wasn't Secretary of State or President at the time when Russian folks were trying to infiltrate the State Department and get an advantage for this particular deal.
Right,
I mean, that's all, but that was reported in the Hill last week, and I really hope they'll change. So we're not worried about uranium, and we're not worried about Russia. That's a different question.
But he wants the informant. He wants the informant to be able to testify. So clearly, he has some interest in what went on with the Uranium One deal.
Shouldn't you? Shouldn't we all? I mean, CNN is so vested in Russia, Russia, Russia. Don't you want to hear from everybody now? Or are we just going to drop the word Russia forevermore now because it gets just a little too close to the woman who ran last time, won't say her name, and the DNC, who
I
paid
don't know.
millions of
You might be
dollars
breaking the rule there. You might be breaking our moratorium there, Kellyanne.
You brought up Russia again, which is the campaign in the last year of those who can't accept the election results, which are a lot of people. But let me just say this. Now, this is a very important point. We have talked about this for the last year. So let's at least close the loop, can't we? And look at what the Clinton campaign, the Democrats did. Now, on Russia, you're asking me a very different question about the President of the United States and Vladimir Putin. You know that he sat down with him for a very long visit when he was one of the last times he was abroad this past spring and summer. That's a very important visit. They discussed a long range of issues. The media, I hope, have covered that at length. The president has said many times as a candidate and now as president.
Yeah.
Be sidelined by that threshold ambiguity versus clarity determination. Put simply, the problem with certain applications of Chevron, as I see it, is that the doctrine is so
for all. He is there.
Yeah, so he's opposed to the Uranium One deal. So then why is he uncomfortable with the Uranium One deal?
He's not. Listen, you're saying the president's worried, the president's uncomfortable. He didn't make a $500,000 speech in Russia. He wasn't the president when Russians were trying to get an advantage.
He's been talking about it a lot.
We're
I'm
not
just trying to get to the bottom.
Don't you want to know it as an American?
What it is that's bothering you about it? What bothers you about it?
Zero. What bothers me about it is that we can't get all of you who have been obsessed about Russia, 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 to cover it now that the shoe is on the other foot.
But what shoe? To cover what part of it is upsetting?
Uranium One was mentioned during the campaign. Clinton Cash was covered. Peter Schweitzer wrote the book Clinton Cash. It was a documented. People had a movie about this. Uranium One was covered at length. I talked about it on CNN, probably sitting across from you at Time Warner.
So you don't think that deal should have happened? Is that the problem?
I think it's exactly what people hate about corruption and politicians and the swamp. I think they look at that and it's not difficult for them to connect the dots. That you have one spouse giving a $500,000 speech, you have another one as a Secretary of State, you have folks trying to get advantage while she's Secretary of State, and then voila, 20% of the U.S. uranium rights go to a Russian interest. That's not difficult for people to understand. That's why a majority of in CNN's polling last year, I know you got rid of your pollsters, but CNN's polling last year showed that a majority did not trust and did not think Hillary Clinton was honest and trustworthy. It's for reasons like this.
One last beat on this, just so that I understand, because there were these 9 agencies, one of them was the State Department when Hillary Clinton was there, that did approve this Uranium One deal. I'll pull it up for you on the screen so that people can see it wasn't just Hillary Clinton, it wasn't the State Department. So are you saying, Kellyanne, that all of these agencies somehow had some vested interest in enriching Hillary Clinton or the Clintons, that everybody was in on this, the Department of Defense, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Homeland Security, and that's why they let the Uranium One deal go through?
I did not say that. I just think that we should continue, those especially who have had such a vested interest in basically 9 to 12 months, should continue to look at it from this angle. And since you and I have been talking, I have a meeting now, but since you and I have been talking, 2 Americans have died of a drug overdose. I'd like to give up the rest of the interview to them since we didn't get to the very important issue of the drug demand. I'll come back.
Kellyanne, hold on. Let's talk about that for 1 second, about the opioid crisis, because the president talked, and I know you have to go, but let's talk about this for 1 second. The president talked really personally about his own family's struggles with addiction and his brother and how it affected him so much. And so do you feel now that the federal government is giving enough money to try to fight this crisis?
So this president has already spent $1 billion this year. In addition, he's through the Public Health Emergency Act that he used yesterday as a vehicle to make good on his national emergency declaration. Allison, he's calling upon Congress to appropriate the money. That's who appropriates the money. Do you know in the Senate health bill that never got a vote and where we couldn't find a single Democrat to support it, there was $45 billion, especially just for opioids. So those who are asking for the money, I would ask them. You have people in your state who are suffering. You have people in your state who will become addicted and who will misuse opioids and other drugs. Why did you turn a blind eye to that money, that $45 billion that was in that health bill? And lots of people don't even know that because it doesn't get covered. But there have been SAMHSA grants. There's been another $81 million fund that the president talked about yesterday. People can pull up the remarks. They can pull up the information. Be happy to provide it to you and your viewers anytime. This takes money, but it also takes a full effort on prevention and education, on treatment and recovery, and on interdiction and enforcement. Fentanyl is coming in from China mostly. The president yesterday committed to raising this with the president of China when he sits down with him in a couple early next month on his Asia trip. We have heroin coming through the southern border. We have a lot of people in this country who get hooked. It starts in mom and dad's medicine cabinet, and that little bottle has your local pharmacy and your family doctor on the label. So that was meant to help someone at some point, but we have 175 Americans dying each day. Allison, if that were happening through a terrorist action or, God forbid, planes falling from the sky, CNN would stop all of their coverage, and we would all be talking about that. So let's start talking about that. And I really hope we can get a lot of Democrats on board with this as well, because people in their states, in their communities, are suffering as well. The First Lady being involved on prevention education. I had the privilege of going to West Virginia with her 2 weeks ago and watched her meet with the folks at the Center Lily's Place, which administers care, physical care and elsewise, to these newborns who are born physically dependent. This is everybody's problem. We want everybody to be part of the solution, and I thank you for giving it a little bit of time and space today.
Oh, we're going to do more than that, Kellyanne. We're going to have Chris Christie on, who, of course, is the head of the Opioid Commission, so we're going to be talking all about it with him because, as you point out, it hits virtually every family in this country, my own included. So, Kellyanne Conway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison. Good day.
For going through all of this with us. All right.
Fascinating interview. Well, let's welcome our viewers, by the way. It's after 8 o'clock now.
Hi,
Allison Camerata speaking to Kellyanne Conway there. Joining us now, CNN senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin and chief political correspondent Dana Bash. I don't know where to begin. I will say what's fascinating to me, you covered a lot of ground there. There's an incredible double standard right now from this White House and Kellyanne Conway on a range of issues when it has to do with the Russia investigation, Dana. What you heard there is Allison pressing her on the CNN reporting about Cambridge Analytica, these people who work for the Trump campaign reaching out to WikiLeaks. What you heard from Kellyanne was, that doesn't matter. You know, that's not important there. However, you know, if anything the Clinton campaign did with opposition research, that matters a lot. She says the Clinton campaign shouldn't be reaching out to a foreign agent. But when Donald Trump Jr. is having a meeting with people promising dirt from Russia, that's not a problem. That's opposition research. Really interesting double standard.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think what she's trying to do is kind of flip the way you just described it by saying you guys are so focused on Russia when it comes to us. You know what, if you care that much, let's focus on what we now know that the Democrats were involved with, which was paying for this dossier in the first place. Look, this is not an easy topic, and she is probably, as you have learned over the interviews that you've done with her, both of you, kind of masterful at turning it around. And I think at the end of the day, though, she did make clear, if you can kind of read through some of the spin, that she clearly was. Well, here's my read. She wasn't comfortable with this, and I've spoken to other people in the campaign who didn't know about it.
I mean, you just heard her say it.
And that doesn't surprise me. You know, if it turns out she's not telling the truth, she's in big trouble. But it doesn't surprise me because I've spoken to other people who should have known about it who didn't.
Yeah, that's her superpower, is flipping the switch and saying, oh, but look over here, but what about, I mean, we had to make a rule there, as you heard, not to talk about Hillary Clinton because that's their automatic default.
Which she promptly broke, yes. But remember, I mean, this whole uranium thing comes from Fox News. I mean, this is a closed investigation that came up in Peter Schweitzer's book, Clinton Cash, in 2015. It was discredited then.
It's from 2010, by the way.
Well, yes.
I mean, that was when
the book came out in 2015.
Started happening.
Exactly. Yeah. The book came out in 2015. It was one of the accusations. It's been discredited. 2 years later, Fox News and Republicans in Congress and Republicans in the White House start raising it simply as a way to wave Russia back at the Democrats. Right. There is nothing new, no new information here. You have the President of the United States, apparently, according to CNN reporting, intervening with the Justice Department, saying, you know, get us more witnesses on this. This is precisely why in the post-Nixon era, there were rules in place to get the White House out of criminal investigations. They're not supposed to be involved in making those sorts of decisions. But, you know, this White House is changing the rules.
And she did not deny. She did not deny that he weighed in. She tried to say Chuck Grassley pushed for it, which may be true.
He probably did.
She tried to say the Justice Department made the
Obsessed
ultimate
with
decision,
whistleblowers.
which may be true also. But she did not deny for a second that the president weighed in there, which is what you're saying is inappropriate.
Yeah, and by the way, I've spoken to Democrats on that committee who say, you know what? If there is a new piece of information, let's hear it. If this FBI informant / whistleblower wants to talk to us about something, let's hear it. But that doesn't mean that this is where, you know, the story is.
The problem
Instead
also, I mean, just to
focus on Russia.
Just in terms of what you were
Both
saying
can
about
be
the
true.
double standard, the Department of Justice also did crack down on 2 top FBI agents who wanted, or officials who wanted to testify to the Senate Judiciary Committee about the Comey firing.
Right.
So they're not free to go and talk
true.
about that to the same committee.
Right.
But they want to lift the gag order on the FBI informant.
That is true. The other thing, and you and I kind of tried not to let out an audible gasp, but that really struck me was when Kellyanne Conway said, I was a campaign manager. I can't be bothered with any of that. Now, for those of us who cover campaigns, we understand what she's saying. Like, I was worried about the big picture. I was trying to get us elected into the White House, and I'm not worried about some guy from Cambridge Analytica trying to, you know, get in touch with Julian Assange. Okay, that might be true, but then you have to accept the fact that on the Democratic side, John Podesta, who was a campaign chair, also didn't know that his campaign was paying for this dossier. You have to, if you believe that, and that's how you run a campaign, you have to accept that's true for the other side.
It's the same exact argument that you can expect Podesta to make going forward about the fact that he didn't know. She, in a way, inoculated him or gave him a way out of this for all the Republicans who were going to say, how could you not know?
John Podesta was the campaign chairman. He was not the campaign manager. The campaign chairman does a lot of fundraising. Robbie Mook was the campaign manager, and he would be the one who would be expected to know about how opposition research was paid for. So I think it's much more important that we find out what Robbie Mook knew about this rather than John Podesta, because that was, and certainly Debbie Wasserman Schultz was completely on the outs on everything. It's very unlikely she would know about this.
Look, one of the big issues to me is just what we talked about, Kellyanne and I, at the end there, which is Russia bad or good? Let's pick a side. Are they bad or good? Okay, so if they're great, I mean, if they're helpful and real world partners in solving world peace, as President Trump has said, then why are we so exercised about the Uranium One deal in the White House?
Because it's a chance to criticize Hillary Clinton.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying pick a side.
Well, it's a chance to criticize Hillary Clinton. The people who are kind of obsessed with this don't want to believe that there wasn't pay for play, because that's what this is all about, that Hillary Clinton didn't somehow involve herself in accepting this deal in order to enrich herself or her husband, and that it was all kind of a backslap to a donor who would have made money. Now, the Clinton campaign says that they went through this, that there was actually no way that this guy could have made money, and I'm not going to get into the details of that. But regardless, I think let's just kind of take a step back and look at the politics. Republicans are trying to get their sea legs here. I mean, they have been, from the perspective of a lot of conservatives, letting Democrats run the show on the Russia investigation, and that's why you see Fox and other conservative outlets saying, come on, guys, we have some quivers here that we can, start to shoot, and let's start doing it.
But I do think, the merits are important on this uranium deal. The whole hypothesis is that that Hillary Clinton rewarded this donor to the Clinton Foundation by giving this contract. First of all, there were 9 agencies
we put them
involved,
up on the screen.
right? And he had sold his interest in the company by the time the contract was awarded. So the idea that there was pay for play here is not credible.
Well, and then we'll see. Look, if the Republicans can't get anything more than what you just said out of this informant, then they've just closed their own case.
But they've gotten us talking about it,
That's true.
which is a victory.
Well, there you go. All right, Jeffrey Tubin, Dana Bash, thank you very much. Great to see you guys.